Good evening, brothers and sisters. Welcome to He Sees Us All YouTube and BitChute channel. The other night I made a video about Jeffrey Epstein, and I apologize, but I gave you all some very wrong information. And the reason that this happened is because I had very little information available to me at the time. As when I made the video, the story had literally just been released. And I corrected myself in a pinned comment within the first hour or so of posting, but I'm still getting comments on that video as if I didn't. That's okay though, and is why I'm making this video tonight. And before I actually get all the way to the end of this video, I have a favor I would like to ask you all. A very small favor, but a favor nonetheless. Please give this video a like. I figured I would ask now to see if I could get a few more people to do so, because I've learned that the more likes a video of mine gets, the more of my subscribers that will end up getting a notification for that video. Never mind getting my video in the recommended section for new viewers anymore. YouTube isn't even alerting the channel's current subscribers. Not even the ones with the bell selected specifically. Not all of them anyway. But the videos that have a higher like ratio also have higher view count percentages by people already subscribed to the channel. So please, for the sake of all of our brothers and sisters who are already subscribed and actually want to see my content, please hit the like button. So, like I said in my video from the other night, it was uberly late when I recorded it, and I was extremely tired. I didn't end up getting much sleep that night either, as I went to bed around like 4:30 in the morning after uploading to both YouTube and BitChute. Then I woke up a few hours later at 7 a.m. to start working on this correction video. Again, I apologize for any confusion, and I hope this video clears everything up. This is why I generally take 2 to 3 days, sometimes even longer than that, on making just one video. I usually go off of multiple pieces of information, and the other night I didn't do that. I should have waited until morning when more information was available and I wasn't so tired. I wanted to get the story out right away, and I just shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry about that, guys, especially because I normally work really hard to research in depth everything I tell you before making a video about whatever the topic may be. I hope you guys can forgive me, and I hope this video somewhat makes up for it. Since the other night, I have read multiple articles about the incident and also some older ones from Epstein's previous arrest for the prostitution of teenage girls as young as 14. A lot more information has been released since I made my last video, and I wanted to correct myself here. In my video about Desmond and the loss of innocence, before this incident even took place, I had briefly mentioned that one, I thought this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing was, a big distraction, and that two, that I thought Epstein would be suicided in prison and would never end up seeing a courtroom. I still stand by this statement. What I got wrong, though, in my video from the other night about Epstein was what I said I thought had happened to Epstein in his cell that day. I said that I thought that his throat was cut, which was not at all the case. And I'm pretty sure the only reason I interpreted the article that way was because the article that I had read had very little information in it to begin with. And I, like I said, was extremely tired because I'm usually in bed by like 10 o'clock every night. Also, when only reading that Epstein sustained an injury to the neck, I just, for whatever reason, pictured that he was attacked by another inmate, which apparently hasn't been ruled out yet, but I'll get to that in just a second. Usually, though, when someone hangs themselves or attempts to hang themselves in prison, they report that that person was either found hanging or found attempting to hang themselves. It's not generally as messy and confusing as these reports are coming out. And the earlier reports all made it seem like it had happened earlier some point that day, or Wednesday, the day that the articles were coming out. So now that I got that out of the way, I would like to read to you all what I have since found about the incident, and then I want to just talk with you guys a bit about it. Since I'm pretty sure most of us all saw this coming, NBC News ended up posting a much more detailed article than the one I read you all the other night. And I want to read some of this article to you guys, and then I have a couple of others that definitely relate to the how and why of this supposed suicide attempt that I'd also like to read a couple of excerpts from. NBC News reported on Wednesday that sources say Jeffrey Epstein was found injured with marks on his neck and in the fetal position in a New York jail cell. And just like the article that I did read from the other night, we're given all unnamed sources. And yet another source questioned whether Epstein might have staged an attack or suicide attempt just to get a move to another facility. You know, I'm willing to bet that lots of money exchanged hands throughout this entire process. The article says here that Jeffrey Epstein, the millionaire financier, please, most of us know where the majority of his finances came from, who was being held on federal sex trafficking charges, was found injured and in a fetal position in his cell at a New York jail, sources close to the investigation told NBC News on Wednesday night. You see, they will never name any of the sources here because the whole thing was an inside job. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that some of the correctional officers had their hands in this. And I'm pretty sure they are some of our unnamed sources as well, while others are probably the fellow inmates in that prison. Epstein, 66, of course he's 66 right now. This whole world is a stage, and Lucifer, along with his Masonic minions, always sign their work somehow. Whether it be a date, a time, or in this case, an age, Epstein, 66, was found semi-conscious with marks on his neck in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan sometime in the last 2 days, the sources said. Epstein is on suicide watch, 2 sources said. You see what they're doing with the sources here, right? And wait a minute. This happened days ago, and we're just hearing about it now? And not just days ago specifically, sometime in the last 2 days. Oddly unspecific, if you ask me. Also, who are these sources? Seriously. If the sources were the police, they would just say so. Chances are pretty high that all of this information is either coming from the actual inmates of that prison, the correctional officers themselves, or more likely a combination of both. And here we go again with our unnamed but yet numbered sources. 2 sources told NBC News that Epstein may have tried to hang himself, while a third source cautioned that the injuries weren't serious, questioning whether Epstein might have staged an attack or a suicide attempt to get a transfer to another facility. Yet another source said that an assault hadn't been ruled out, and that another inmate identified by sources as Nicholas Tartaglione, now if that name doesn't sound connected, had been questioned. Tartaglione, 49. I just want to quickly point out, Epstein is 66, as above, as 66 as they're both pointing up. And Tartaglione is 49. So below, as if it's both pointing down. As the number 4 is often used by occultists in a digital format to be the opposite or mirror image of 6, just as 9 is. So Tartaglione, 49, is, would be, it's almost like 44 or 99 because 4 is literally the digital format of 6. So 66 in it's 666 as if it's 2 arrows pointing up or even 2 arrows pointing down, and then 49 as if it was 2 arrows pointing up or the latter as well. Anyway, Tartaglione, 49, and get this, is a former police officer in Briarcliff Manor, New York, who was arrested in December 2016 and accused of killing 4 men in an alleged cocaine distribution conspiracy, then burying their bodies in his yard in Otisville, according to court records. He was charged with drug conspiracy and 4 counts of murder and is awaiting trial. Let's talk about that for a second, because things seem to be just getting more and more unclear here. First of all, this all took place multiple days ago, not on Wednesday. And secondly, there may or may not have been an attacker. And that attacker, if he was the attacker, was a man who was once a police officer in the state of New York. Honestly, I don't know if this story could get any more coincidental than it already is. Most police officers are Masons themselves. And honestly, I just think we should all be keeping an eye on this Mr. Tartaglione's trial here. I'm curious to see what kind of sentence he ends up receiving in the end for his crimes. Also, being a New York police officer makes the chances of this man having some kind of tie to the Clintons or the Clinton Foundation a lot more likely. This whole story is so wishy-washy with multiple statements from multiple unnamed sources. It's almost like the game of telephone, and you really have no idea how much of what we're reading and hearing is even accurate. Unnamed sources are completely unverifiable, and the article that I read originally was so vague that I thought someone had cut Epstein's throat. And honestly, the ones that are coming out now and the ones that have come out since that do have more details aren't really a whole lot better than the first one I read. Sources said Tartaglione claimed not to have seen anything and not to have touched Epstein. An attorney for Tartaglione denied that his client attacked Epstein, saying that Tartaglione and Epstein got along well, and that Epstein appeared to be fine on Wednesday. Okay, now hold on a damn minute. Epstein appeared to be fine when? On Wednesday? I thought his supposed suicide attempt was some days prior to Wednesday, and he was then put on suicide watch, which means he would have no interaction with other inmates. Or are we talking an entire week now? And if we are talking a whole week, why did it take so long for this to be reported to the public? Not only that, why is the media then lying and saying it was just a few days prior to Wednesday? And lastly, to say that Tartaglione was friends with Epstein is highly suspicious. Because convicted pedos do not get the friendliest treatment in prison, and neither do the friends of convicted pedos. And if we're talking a cellmate scenario, which is how it now sounds, but we can't be entirely sure because they didn't come right out and say that, but if we're talking a cellmate scenario, it's completely possible other prisoners may have forced Tartaglione into it. Like you hurt Epstein or we hurt you type of scenario, as other inmates are always eager to hurt the incoming child predators, especially one with a big name such as Epstein's. I still think it's much more likely that the Clintons are involved, though, and Mr. Tartaglione here is going to do little to no time for his own crimes now. Epstein pleaded guilty in 2008 to procuring a person younger than 18 for prostitution and felony solicitation of prostitution. He served a 13-month sentence in Florida County Jail and was granted a federal prosecution agreement by the Office of the U.S. Attorney for Miami, Alex Acosta, who resigned as U.S. Labor Secretary this month as criticism of the plea agreement grew even louder. The non-prosecution agreement, which limited the scope of the deal to cover only the Miami area, would no longer protect Epstein if he committed illegal acts in other parts of the country. Now, the deal they gave Epstein was absolutely disgusting, as the girls that they mentioned under the age of 18 that were discussed in the deal were only 14. And Epstein then paid some of these 14-year-old girls to go out and recruit some of their 14-year-old friends. But I have some screenshots from another article about that I want to show you all in just a few minutes. Epstein is charged in a new indictment handed up in New York with 1 count of sex trafficking conspiracy and 1 count of sex trafficking. He could be sentenced up to 45 years in prison if he's convicted. See, he won't be convicted though. If they have moved him, I'm sure the Clintons or whoever else may want to silence this man, and that could be one or more of several big names, including the current presidents. But anyone who may want to silence him will probably be able to access him a whole lot easier now. Epstein has mentioned that he was willing to give up information on some of these people here, and the Clinton family was high priority on his rat list. Maybe they've already killed him and plan to replace him with a lookalike or clone. One that isn't going to give testimony to any of the things that Epstein said he was going to give testimony to. Many people, since at least the 80s, have tried to speak out against the Clintons, their BS fundraisers, and their many, many illegal crimes, and no one lives long enough to see it through. The Clintons have so many bodies lined up behind them that I think it would be pretty safe to say that if they even get a hinkling that someone on their team is going to speak out of line, that person drops dead. So there is no way possible that they would let someone like Jeffrey Epstein take them down. Federal prosecutors allege that from at least 2002 to 2005, Epstein paid girls as young as 14 hundreds of dollars in cash for sex at either his Manhattan townhouse or his estate in Palm Beach, Florida. Prosecutors said the acts began as massages but turned sexual, and that he would pay his victims to recruit additional girls. Now, remember how this article just mentioned that Epstein did 13 months? Well, they really don't explain or even evaluate how screwed up that fact is. And not only did he only serve 13 months, he served 13 months in a county jail. It's not like he went to a federal prison, which is where this man belonged after the things he did. I had to look elsewhere to see what was up with Epstein getting such a great deal, and my guess is that the media had everyone good and distracted at that time while all of his important friends helped him out. Billionaire sex offender's sweetheart deal violated our rights, victims tell feds. You know, no kidding, his deal violated their rights. This man got away with manipulating young girls who had barely even had time to be teenagers yet into having sex with disgusting and gross old men. And chances are many of these girls never even ended up leaving the island. Nearly 8 years after billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal from the criminal justice system, a judge is preparing to rule on a rare civil lawsuit against the federal government that alleges prosecutors violated 2 teen girls' rights as crime victims. Epstein, now 62, and again, this article is the one that I mentioned that is a bit older, but I had to know what was up with him only serving 13 months for soliciting multiple, not just one, multiple girls as young as 14. He is 66 now, so this article is 4 years old. Epstein, now 66, pleaded guilty to state charges in Palm Beach County in July of 2008 and admitted he hired local underage girls for erotic massages and sex at his South Florida mansion. He was jailed for 13 months of an 18-month sentence and served a year of house arrest. Wow. Just wow. You know, I think that is even worse than if he served 13 months of a 13-month sentence. Not only did he not receive enough time to begin with, they let him out early on good behavior. Are you freaking kidding me? Yeah, I would say that these girls all had a legitimate lawsuit. And if they all had a legitimate lawsuit against the Department of Justice, which they did, then it leaves to be said that it was, and I mean, obviously it was, but this is legitimate proof on paper If these girls have in turn sued the United States Justice Department for violating their rights as crime victims, then it leaves to be said that it was the U.S. Justice Department that got Jeffrey Epstein off in the first place. Well, not entirely off, but 13 months for what he did? Leniency really isn't a fair word here. The leniency and unusual circumstances of his treatment raised many eyebrows because other sex offenders received much harsher punishments. I'm sorry, I get upset and I start to stutter. The leniency and unusual circumstances of his treatment raised many eyebrows because other sex offenders received much harsher punishments for comparable crimes. The maximum possible punishment for the offenses was 15 years. 2 adult women who say Epstein sexually abused them when they were minors filed a federal lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice in July 2008, alleging federal prosecutors violated their rights as crime victims by not consulting with them before signing an agreement to not prosecute Epstein. Now, in the first article that I showed you guys, it said that federal prosecutors alleged from at least 2002 to 2005 that Epstein paid girls as young as 14 hundreds of dollars to go to either his townhouse in Manhattan or, more often, go to his estate in Palm Beach, Florida, and then also recruit their friends to do the same at a later date and time. And, they say at least 2002 because even they know it was going on much earlier than 2002. So at minimum, these girls waited 3 years to seek whatever kind of justice they could. But it's more likely it's 6 years, and there again, you have your numerology embedded right in. Lastly, I want to discuss why Epstein received such a, and this is how these articles have put it, such a sweetheart deal back in 2008 when the media had everyone good and distracted. And it is also the same reason chances are quite high that Epstein won't ever see a courtroom this time around. And if he does, he won't be speaking about the Clintons. Now, this is another article that I came across afterwards, and I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, obviously, for the sake of time. I just wanted to make this video to correct the mistakes that I had made late Wednesday night when I had very little information available to me. And I figured I would close this video out with what is pretty obvious to everyone, not just with Epstein's botched suicide attempt, which may not have even been blotched at all, but that remains to be seen, but with everything surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and why he has even been able to fly under the radar for this long. Jeffrey Epstein has held friends in some very high places for many years now, and up until recently, those friends have been able to not only support his lifestyle, but they've been able to keep him out of trouble, for the most part. Only this time around, there is no protecting Epstein because this time around, there is a lot more eyes on him. And the whole situation, and, all together, they have to throw somebody under the bus. So the Clintons, of course, will do what they always do when they are backed into a corner, and they will silence the threat. And the reach of the Clintons, as it always has, goes quite far. They wouldn't have such a high body count if they weren't phenomenally good at silencing their enemies. And it would appear that Bill is already placing some distance between him and his next round of questions that will be coming from the FBI. This article is about Epstein visiting the Clinton White House multiple times in the early 90s, and it demonstrates quite well the close relationship Epstein at one time had with the Clinton family. And that's one family you really don't want to be stuck in a prison cell waiting to testify against. Now, apparently, Bill is saying he and Epstein have only had a handful of encounters. 6, to be exact. The numerology is literally all over this case and is just right there in our faces, just as the occultists always do. And Bill claims during all 6 encounters that he had staff and security detail in tow. Funny thing is, though, the Daily Beast, the media outlet responsible for this article here, was able to uncover ties between Epstein and the Clinton administration that date back to Bill's earliest days in the White House, or, when Bill was president. Even the media outlet responsible for uncovering Bill's lies this time seems like an innuendo. I mean, seriously, the Daily Beast? Come on. But of course, Bill lied when he was put on the spot, and honestly, I think that's just because it's what comes natural to him and his wife both. But how close Epstein and the Clinton family truly were is why Epstein will never, ever see a courtroom. Not the real Epstein anyway, not the one that was going to testify against the Clintons. And Bill lying and saying that they've only met on 6 occasions goes to show that he is just trying to sweep their relationship right under the rug. Because chances are, how they met and their entire relationship thereafter revolved around Epstein's party throwing abilities. Days after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest on sex trafficking charges in New York, Bill Clinton distanced himself from the high-flying financier and convicted sex offender. The former president owned up to just 6 encounters with Epstein starting in 2002. 4 flights on the billionaire's private jet, a single trip to his Harlem office, and 1 brief visit to his New York apartment, all with staff and security detail in tow. Now, you see, normally I would just say that 6 times is probably the total amount of documented times, and that was why Bill was making such asinine claims. But that isn't at all the case, which makes me think either Bill is just that stupid, or it's all just a part of their plan, and it's all a part of their agenda, like this was what Bill was told to say. Because it really shouldn't have been so easy this time around to uncover that Bill was lying. So easy, as a matter of fact, that the Daily Beast, and I mean, come on, it just happens to be a media outlet carrying that name, the Daily Beast, but so easy that the Daily Beast was very easily able to prove that Clinton was lying. Now, a Daily Beast investigation has uncovered ties between Epstein and the Clinton administration that date back to the president's earliest days in the White House, casting doubt on the oft-circulated narrative that the two only began associating after Clinton left office, which is what Clinton's spokesperson and the whole Clinton administration is trying to claim right now, that Epstein and Bill acquired their relationship after Bill was president. When questioned about the president's relationship with Epstein and whether or not Bill knew about Epstein's involvement with underage girls, Angel Urania, Clinton's spokesperson, denied having any knowledge whatsoever about Epstein's crimes and even goes as far as to say any suggestion to the contrary is both factually inaccurate and irresponsible. Which I think is quite interesting, seeing as to Bill denying having any relationship whatsoever with Epstein during his presidency, and the fact that we can prove this isn't true. Not only do photos exist of Bill and Epstein together in the very early 90s, we also have this photocopy from September 29th, 1993, from a White House donors reception dinner that lists both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell as attendees. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, not that that matters, but who is Ghislaine Maxwell, you might wonder? Well, allegedly, she is Jeffrey Epstein's madam. And when Clinton released his initial statement on Epstein, he did not explain the multiple other trips he appears to have taken on the financier's plane, including 1 flight to Westchester with Epstein, his alleged madam, and an unnamed female. In 2002, Clinton praised Epstein in New York Magazine as a highly successful philanthropist. And recently, a media outlet called Politico claimed that Clinton and Epstein connected in the first few years after the president left office, citing people who know those involved, it sounds an awful lot like our unnamed sources in the previous articles, but the article pegged Maxwell, the alleged madam, as the glue connecting Bill and Epstein, and then Clinton's daughter Chelsea as the president's connection to Maxwell. While the alleged madam may have been the glue holding together Bill and Epstein, she nor Epstein met the president through Chelsea after he was in office. This article also mentions how a Clinton spokesperson claimed Chelsea and Maxwell were not close, but yet Maxwell attended Chelsea's wedding in 2010 and they vacationed together in 2009. So you can pretty much trust the Clinton spokesperson just as much as you can trust the Clintons themselves. I think it's much more likely, though, that Chelsea met Maxwell through Bill, who met Maxwell through Epstein. I mean, come on. These documents I showed you put Maxwell and Epstein at a very, very private reception dinner for donors in which Bill and Hillary were both present. I wanted to tie this video up with that final article because I honestly think Epstein's whole incident the other day, whatever day that was, as they are being very unclear on any facts to this situation, but Epstein's whole incident may not have been real at all, and that's why we never heard anything the day of or even the day after. I'm not at all making claims that it wasn't real, so please don't hear what I'm saying that way, or that I know for fact that it wasn't real. I'm not making those claims. There are just some questions here that seriously need some answers. If they did fake the incident, however, it would also explain how Tartaglione said he saw Epstein earlier that day or Wednesday, but that very same article claims Epstein attempted suicide days prior to Wednesday. And if that was the case, he would have, and then that they put him on suicide watch. And if that was the case, then Tartaglione there wouldn't have been able to see Epstein on Wednesday at all. There shouldn't be such a big error if he actually tried to hang himself and was actually moved to suicide watch thereafter. And we really should have been informed of all of this much earlier than we were, as the public. If this was falsified for any reason, it would be because the Clintons were able to pay his way out and replace him with a lookalike who won't be speaking about them in court. And if this wasn't falsified, then expect to be hearing about Epstein again in the news quite soon. If this was a hanging, why question a possible attacker? And if there was an attacker and this was made to look like a hanging, but Epstein survived by accident with only markings on his neck, then the next time we hear about Epstein's tragedy, it will most likely be that he suffered a heart attack of some sort, because I think a second attempted suicide would come with far too many more questions, as if we don't have enough already. I hope this video cleared everything up that I said in my last video. I have a few video ideas in the works after this one. My Patreons know about them already. I've finally figured out how to put private videos up for Patreons only. So I've been doing private videos for them, and I plan on continuing to do so and trying to do, maybe at least twice a month up on there, Patreon only. Ones that I don't publish to YouTube at all. If you do have anything, though, that you would be interested in me taking a look at and possibly making a video about in the future, you can email me at heseesusall@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter or message me on Twitter at heseesusall1, or you can follow me on Reddit. Subscribe to my backup channel here on YouTube, and you can also go to You can also go subscribe to my BitChute channel if you're interested as well. I like BitChute because they're not as strict as YouTube, so if the hammer ever truly came down on all of us truthers, you would know where else besides YouTube that you could find my content. And if the hammer ever came down fully on us YouTube truthers and we weren't at all able to be on YouTube anymore, I would have at least already set up shop somewhere else. I do already upload my videos to BitChute, and some of the ones that I would fear of putting up here on YouTube, I would just put there and only there. I haven't yet made a BitChute only video. I'm not even sure if I'm saying BitChute right, but I'm sure at some point in the future that day will eventually come. Again, I hope that this video cleared up any confusion I may have caused with my last video, and I apologize that it took me a couple of days to finally get this video out. But you see, that's the thing. I didn't take my time to research fully or structure my last video on Epstein at all, and I usually type up some talking points and get my information from multiple sources, not just one, and then I spend days recording and re-recording until I get it just right, and I'm not like yelling or stuttering too much. I get upset and I really start to stutter sometimes. I know you guys don't realize that because you do now because I've told you a couple times, but you don't realize that because I do re-record. But when I get upset, sometimes I start to stumble over my words. I spend a lot of time recording and re-recording until I get it just right. And then another day or two adding back in all of the imagery that I was reading and viewing while I was recording that video. I'm sorry. I was just so excited with that video. Well, excited isn't really the right word, but I was so shocked by all of the information that I wanted to get it all out to you all immediately. I will do my very best to not put you all through that again in the future. Obviously, I can't promise, as we all make mistakes, but I can promise I will do my very best, and that I will absolutely take my time with all of my future videos. Thank you all so much for joining me today again. I love each and every one of you. Please be sure to leave me a comment down below, as I absolutely love hearing from you guys, and I do my best to read every comment. If I do happen to heart your comment, that means that I've read it. I just figured I'd let you all know that, just in case. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that to you guys before. Anyway, now I'm rambling. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. May our Heavenly Father continue to bless each and every one of you, and may He protect us all, continue to see us all, and continue to save us all. May He continue to guide us, and may He keep us all safe in these very questionable days that lie ahead of us all.